Hello everyone, this is lesson number 2 of your Law and Public Officers, and in this lesson, we are going to cover the following topics: the de facto officer doctrine, the difference between de jure and de facto officers, usurper versus de facto officer, the proceedings if you want to try the title of a de facto officer, the liabilities thereof, the approval by the Civil Service Commission, the grants of the power to appoint, the different kinds of presidential appointments, and the appointment to the career service of the Civil Service Commission. You might ask why it is important to know the differences between a de facto, a de jure, and a usurper, because class, a de facto officer, or one acting as if he has authority, or that of a de jure, or one that is legally recognized, in a usurper, a person who is illegally seizing power, helps a government employee understand their legal rights and responsibilities. In knowing their differences, we can also determine the validity of their actions, and actions taken by de jure officers are typically considered legally binding and valid, while those taken by usurpers may be deemed void or illegal. Additionally, it must be noted that decisions made by a de facto or de jure authorities may have different levels of enforceability, and decisions made by de jure authorities are generally more likely to be enforced by courts and government agencies, whereas those made by a de facto or a usurper may be subject to challenge or nullification. So before we begin our definition of a de facto officer or the de facto officer doctrine, let us first discuss the case of Torres versus Tribo. This is a very old case, and this happened during the 1947 election. So in this case, class, Bernardo Torres, Mamerto Ribo, and Alejandro Balderian are candidates running for governor in Leyte. Mamerto Ribo was then the incumbent governor, while the two other candidates were members of the provincial board. Now, based on the revised election code, these two, who are members of the provincial board, were supposed to sit as members of the provincial board of canvassers, but since they were candidates class, they were actually disqualified. Now, through the revised election code, the person who should take over those two should be the school superintendent, the district engineer, as well as the district health officer as PBC members. And it was indicated that they could assume the post as soon as they received the appointment. But the sad news is the division school superintendent and the district engineer did not receive their appointment. So on November 22, the provincial treasurer and the provincial fiscal, acting as health officer, the chief clerk of the division superintendent, as well as the assistant civil engineer in the district engineer's office, canvassed the votes for the provincial governor and the other officials, and then proclaimed Ribo as the duly elected governor. Now, the issue here is whether or not the chief clerk of the division superintendent of the school and the assistant civil engineer in the district engineer's office were lawful members of the PBC. The answer is no, because there is no evidence to show that they were authorized by their respective superiors to represent them in the canvassing of votes. Remember that the COMELEC appointed the division school superintendent and the district engineer. And the enumeration of the revised election code is exclusive, and no other person can be appointed as such. Now, the second issue here is whether or not the two could at least be deemed as de facto officers. So, pwede po ba natin gawing de facto, or are they considered de facto officers? Si chief clerk of the division and the assistant civil engineer? The answer is no. An officer de facto is one who has the reputation of being the officer he assumes to be, and yet he is not a good officer in point of law. He must have acted as an officer for such length of time, under color of title, and under circumstances of reputation or acquiescence by the public and public authorities as to afford a presumption of appointment or election, and induce people without injury and relying on the supposition that he is the officer he assumes to be to submit or invoke his action. Here, class, the clerk of the division and the assistant engineer did not possess any of these conditions, and they acted without any appointment, even commission, or any color of title to the office. There was no acquiescence, public or private, in the discharge of their position. In fact, the very person most greatly affected by their assumption of the office, who is actually a candidate thereof, was not notified and was not aware of their assumption of office. Now, what then is a de facto officer, or what is a de facto officer doctrine? One who has the reputation of being the officer that he assumes to be, and yet is not a good officer in point of law. What are the legal effects of the de facto officer? The acts of the de facto public officer, insofar as they affect the public, are valid, binding, and with full legal effect. The doctrine is intended not for the protection of the public officer, but for the protection of the public and individuals who get involved in the official acts of persons discharging the duties of a public office. What is the basis of this doctrine? The doctrine springs from the fear of the chaos that would result from multiple and repetitious suits challenging every action taken by every official whose claim to office could be open to question, and seeks to protect the public by ensuring the orderly functioning of the government despite technical defects in Title II office. So again, a de facto officer is someone who acts as though they hold a particular public office even if they may not have been properly appointed or elected according to the strict legal requirements. So who is a de facto officer? He is someone who acts as though he holds a particular public office, even if he may not have been properly appointed or elected according to the strict legal requirements. And what is the effect of having a de facto officer? Despite any potential defects in his appointment or election, the actions taken by the de facto officer are generally considered valid, binding, and legally effective. This means, class, that the decisions and actions he may make while in office are recognized as legitimate. This is so to avoid potentially harmful consequences in invalidating all decisions made by the de facto officer whose authority is disputed. So imagine like there's a person who starts acting like they have an important job in the government, like being a mayor or a judge. But for some reason, there's a question about whether they were officially appointed or elected to that position according to all the rules. Now, even if there's a doubt about whether this person is supposed to be in that job, the things he does while he is acting as if he is the mayor or the judge are still considered valid and legal. So this means their decisions, orders, and actions have real legal power even if they weren't technically supposed to be in that position. Why does this happen? It is not to protect the person acting as, the mayor or the judge. Instead, it's to make sure that the government keeps running smoothly and that people's rights are protected. So imagine if every time there was a question about whether someone was in right position, everything they do could be thrown out or just challenged in court, and it would create a big mess and might even stop government from working properly. So here, as long as someone is acting like an official and people are treating them like one, the things they do in that role are still considered valid. This helps keep things running smoothly and ensures that the government can still function, even if there are questions about who should be in charge. What then are the elements of a de facto officer? First, there should be a validly existing office or a de jure office. Second, there is actual physical possession of the said office. And third, there is color of title to the office. And when we say color of title to the office, this means that by reputation or acquiescence, the public without inquiry relies on the supposition that he is the public officer that he purports to be. Second, there is a known and valid appointment or election, but the officer failed to conform to a requirement imposed by law, like taking an oath. And color of title is under a known appointment or election, but void because of the ineligibility of the officer or want of authority of the appointing or electing authority, or because of an irregularity in his appointment or election, such ineligibility, want of authority, or irregularity being unknown to the public, and color of title to the office is under a known appointment or election pursuant to an unconstitutional law before the law is declared unconstitutional. Let us discuss these things one by one. When we say a validly existing office or a de jure office, this refers to the official position within the government that the person is supposed to hold. It means that there is a real job or role established by law. So for example, John is elected as the mayor of a city according to the rules set out in the city's charter. So ano ang existing public office niya? The mayor's office. Second, there is actual physical possession of the said office, meaning the person is physically occupying or performing the duties of the public office. Like after John was being elected, John moves into the mayor's office, attends city council meetings, and start making decisions about city policies and is actually acting as a mayor. Third, there is a color of title to the office. What does it mean? This means that the person appears to have the right to hold the office, even if there are legal questions about their appointment or election. And when we say color of title, what is the first one? We have by reputation or acquiescence. The public, without inquiry, relies on the supposition that he is the public officer that he purports to be. This is required usually when the individual has acted as an officer for such a length of time that the public believes that he is the public officer that he assumes to be. Meaning, the public assumes that the person is the rightful officer because they've been acting like one for a long time and nobody has even questioned it. Like for example, John has been acting as the mayor for several months, attending events, making speeches, and nobody has raised any objections or challenged the authority. Second, under a known and valid appointment or election, but the officer failed to conform to a requirement imposed by law, such as taking an oath. So the person here was properly appointed or elected, but they failed to fulfill a legal requirement. Like, John was elected as mayor but he forgot to officially take the oath of office required by law. However, everyone still recognizes him as the mayor and he continues to perform his duties. Next, under a known appointment or election but void because of the ineligibility of the officer. So take for example, John was elected as mayor but it's later discovered that he didn't meet the residency requirements outlined in the city charter. However, nobody is aware of this issue, so John continues to act as a mayor. Lastly, under a known appointment or election pursuant to an unconstitutional law before the law is declared unconstitutional. Like for example, John was appointed as mayor under a city ordinance that was later declared unconstitutional by the courts. However, at the time of the appointment, nobody was aware of the legal problem with the ordinance. So John's action as mayor are still considered valid. Okay, that is a de facto officer. Now, what then is the difference between a de jure and a de facto officer? A de jure officer rests on right, while a de facto officer rests on reputation. A de jure officer has a lawful right or title to the office, while a de facto has the possession and performs the duties under color of right without being technically qualified in all points of law to act. A de jure officer cannot be removed in a direct proceeding, while a de facto officer may be ousted in direct proceeding against him. When we say a de jure officer rests on right, this means they have been lawfully appointed or elected according to all the requirements and procedures. He cannot be removed in a direct proceeding since they hold the office by legal right and cannot be easily removed from their position through a direct legal challenge. So for example, class, a mayor who has been elected through a fair and legal election process with all requirements met according to the law, the mayor cannot be removed from office without going through the proper legal procedures such as recall elections. On the other hand, when we say de facto officer rests on reputation, his authority is based on his reputation on the assumption that he has the right to hold the office even if there may be legal doubts about his qualifications. Despite potential legal deficiencies in his appointment, a de facto officer physically occupies the office and carries its duties, giving the appearance of a legitimate authority. Unlike a de jure officer, a de facto officer can be removed from office through a direct legal challenge, especially if his appointment is proven to be legally defective. So an example here, class, in the Philippines. Suppose someone is appointed as a barangay captain by the local government unit, but later it is discovered that his appointment violates certain legal requirements such as residency qualification. But despite this, he continues to perform the duties of a barangay captain, and the community recognizes him as such until his appointment is legally challenged and invalidated through a direct legal proceeding.